Time to review Marvel's magnum opus.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for yet another Marvel film, not an MCU film, another non-MCU Marvel film. And this is for the second installment of this series I am reviewing. And yesterday I reviewed the first installment that started it all. And now, of course, this is for the sequel to that film I reviewed yesterday, and is for what I like to call the best Marvel movie of all time. That film is going to be for none other than 2004's Spider-Man 2, once again directed by Sam Raimi, and the sequel to 2002's Spider-Man. So how was this film made? I mean, what's this film about? Well, Peter Parker, after 2 years of fighting crime as Spider-Man, is now an unhappy man, though. His life has begun to fall apart. The girl he loves is now engaged to someone else, his grades are failing, he cannot keep any jobs, and on top of it, the newspaper Daily Bugle is attacking him viciously, claiming that Spider-Man is a criminal. He reaches the breaking point and gives up the crime fighter's life once and for all. But after a failed fusion experiment, eccentric and obsessive scientist Dr. Otto Octavius is transformed into supervillain Dr. Octopus, or Doc Ock for short. Having 4 long tentacles as extra hands, Peter guessed it must be time for Spider-Man to return. But how would he act upon it? So, how was this film made? Well, immediately after finishing the first one, director Sam Raimi, with help from James Kittley, signed into directing a sequel. In April 2002, Sony hired Smallville alumni Alfred Gough and Miles Miller to write a script for the film. On May 8, 2002, following Spider-Man's record-breaking $150 million opening weekend, Sony announced a sequel for 2004. Entitled The Amazing Spider-Man after the character's main comic book title. The film was given a budget of $200 million and aimed for release date of May 7, 2004. The following months, David Cope was added to co-write with Gough and Miller, and Cope originally wanted to do the Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn story and have Gwen be killed in the middle of the second movie. That was saved for another sequel, though. A different series, though. In September 2002, Michael Chabon was hired to rewrite, and his job had a younger Doc Ock who became infatuated with Mary Jane. His mechanical limbs use endorphins and counteract the pain of being attached to his body, which he enjoys. When he enters 2 muggers on a date that horrified Mary Jane, and the resulting battle of Spider-Man, his tentacles are fused together. A fusion begins to kill him, but in the script, Octavius is the creator of the genetically altered Spider from the first film. He gives Peter an antidote to remove his powers, and this means that when Octavius is done with his tentacles, he wants to extract Spider-Man's spine to save himself. And it led to an alliance with Harry, a detail which made it into the first film, or kind of what finished film, though. Definitely not this script, though. And beforehand, Harry and the Daily Bugle put a $10 million price for Spider-Man's head, and it caused the city's citizens to turn against him. That script did not happen. But then Raimi shifted through the previous drafts by Gough, Miller, Cope, and Chabon, picking what he liked with the screenwriter Alvin Sargent. He felt that thematically the film had to explore Peter's conflict with his personal wants against his responsibility, exploring the positive and negatives of his chosen path. Now he ultimately decides that he can be happy as a heroic figure. And Raimi said he took the inspiration from Superman 2, the 1980 sequel, for the story of Peter Parker giving up his responsibilities. While the story takes some partial influence from Doc Ock's debut in 1963 and 1966 storyline, If This Would Be My Destiny, the story was mostly inspired by the 1967 storyline Spider-Man No More, specifically The Amazing Spider-Man number 50. It was decided that Dr. Octopus would be kept as the villain, as he was both visually interesting villain who is a physically match for Spider-Man and a sympathetic figure with humanity, accompanied by the fact that the character was reportedly considered as a villain for the first film over the course of its 15-year development. Raimi even changed much of the character's backstory, while adding the idea that Otto Octavius being a hero of Peter, and their conflict was about trying to rescue him from his demons rather than kill him. So I like Sam Raimi went with that approach. It's perfect for the sequel. Principal photography would then go on to begin in April 2003 in New York City and even took place in Los Angeles. Reshoots even later took place that year and concluded in December. Spider-Man 2 was then released in both conventional and IMAX theaters on June 30th, 2004. And how was this one received? Well, same as the first, same outcome as the first one, except a little bit more. It received a slightly even more widespread acclaim from critics, who praised its emotional weight and its visual effects, and Maguire Molina's performances and Raimi's direction. While it didn't gross as much as the first film, with about $789 million worldwide, though. But it was still successful and became the third highest grossing film of the year. The film even won Best Visual Effects at the Academy Awards, and nominated for Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Editing, and furthermore, it even received 5 awards at the Saturn Awards, which was Best Fantasy Film and Best Director for Raimi. And as of today, this film has still been widely regarded as one of the greatest superhero films ever made, and a blueprint for future movies in the genre. And its success led to Spider-Man 3 in 2007, 3 years after this. As for my reaction, well, I think some of you all know this is one of my YouTube friends, Lukimus Prime's favorite movie of all time. For me, this is easily my favorite Marvel movie of all time. And you're all like, I thought Infinity War is your favorite Marvel movie. That's my favorite Marvel MCU movie. I still like, and yeah, Infinity War is also one of my favorite movies of all time, and my favorite Marvel MCU movie, but I still like this one slightly, but I still like Spider-Man 2 slightly better. I still think Spider-Man 2 is a bit superior. So Spider-Man 2 is actually my favorite Marvel movie of all time. And it's my favorite of the non-MCU ones as well. Spider-Man 2 is just a pure masterpiece in every way, and it deserves all the praise it gets. Spider-Man 2002 is great, but Spider-Man 2 does the character even better and captures his struggles in the comics perfectly. Like when I was a kid, you notice this VHS tape behind me? I'd always watch this movie on VHS when I was in 2nd grade, nearly every month on Saturdays. I had that very same VHS during that time up until the 2010s when we kind of gave some stuff away. But then, I found it at a flea market, and I repurchased it, so now I own it on VHS again. I own the movie on DVD, but I also want to own this movie on VHS because because this VHS tape right here is nostalgic and it holds childhood memories. So yeah, this copy just is a good throwback to my time in the 2000s. Always was just glad to have this movie as a huge escape. Whenever I just wanted to whenever I was that kid who just wanted to escape from the real world and watch a certain superhero movie. Others would say Batman. For me, it was always this movie. This movie was like the big childhood superhero movie of the 2000s. I was really obsessed with this movie when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it on home media after I saw the first film. This is the one I'd always watch the most. You can see why here. Sequels are very tricky. They're very hard to crack open, but every so often we do get a sequel that's better than the original, like Empire Strikes Back, Godfather Part 2, Terminator 2, Aliens, Winter Soldier, Dark Knight, Infinity War, and many more. And Spider-Man 2 is one of them. The common thing among mostly all sequels is that sometimes bigger is better. It's not always the case, and that's where director Sam Raimi comes in. He does the opposite. He makes it smaller, more personal, but with big impactful moments. Here we see a damaged Peter Parker. He's still full of guilt with the death of Uncle Ben. He's getting fired from every single job. He's late to school because he's busy protecting New York as Spider-Man. And his relationship between Harry and Mary Jane are deteriorating as he keeps disappointing them. And in the end, he gives up his duties as Spider-Man, only to return to action when Dr. Octopus is threatening the city. This movie, just in many ways, is a coming-of-age story for Peter Parker. It has a movie romantic subplot. Peter learns to accept his responsibilities as Spider-Man in the long run, and puts that first above all his desires, including Mary Jane, and he finds closure by telling Aunt May the truth about what happened on the night of Uncle Ben's murder. And Tony Maguire just brings much depth and complexity to Peter Parker, and it's a very fine performance by him, showcasing the right amount of emotion in every single scene. Alfred Molina is even excellent here as Dr. Otto Octavius, also known as Dr. Octopus, whom Peter deems as an idol in the beginning of the film, and what makes him such an awesome and likable villain is that film literally allows you to like him from the beginning, and to see his downfall to villainy, then to a redeemable hero at the end makes an engaging story, who sacrifices his own life. They give credit to Raimi and his writing team as they provide Doc Ock much-needed flair here. And, yeah. And James Franco is also great playing the a-hole friend, like, and as an audience member, it's definitely sad to see their friendship deteriorate in this movie, as Harry questions Peter's loyalty to him or to Spider-Man, whom he still wants revenge on because he believes Spider-Man, killed his dad. He doesn't know his dad is a Green Goblin at all. And the action serves the story here well. It seamlessly transitions to action set pieces while still serving the narrative. Not to mention that they are awesome, and all the fights between Spidey and Doc Ock are an adrenaline rush, particularly in the subway train fight. But with that being said, if you took out all the action scenes of this movie, you'd still have a very intriguing and moving story to watch. That's how good this film is. It's not just all action and no heart. When it wants to tug on the heartstrings, it yanks them. The scene with Uncle Ben is like, with him having that vision, Peter has that vision of Uncle Ben, and tells him he's Spider-Man no more, and Uncle Ben just looks despaired. Like, you could tell, like, Uncle Ben could see that could clearly see that Peter in the role of Spider-Man was saving many lives, and it's just gut-wrenching to see Uncle Ben's ghost. This react Sally is just so painful, raw, and added to perfection when he hears Peter say he's Spider-Man no more. It just makes you tear up every single time. Just watching him give up his roles as Spider-Man, realizes it's interfering with his life. And there's also the usual rhymey campiness, like with quips and funny moments, giving the film a real charm about it. And all this is underlined by Danny Elfman's brilliant, bombastic, and booming score that it really just sounds like the audio equivalent of a comic book. And one of the successes Spider-Man 2 has is the depth of the characters and stories, as there's more than one strand. And Tobey Maguire has the same natural ability which he possessed in the first film to accurately convey the character of Peter Parker, who struggles with his feelings for Mary Jane, who becomes frustrated that he can't return her feelings for him, to his fractured friendship with Harry Osborn, who harbors a deep grudge against Spider-Man, to trying to balance his life as a superhero, student, and employee, and struggling with his Aunt May over Uncle Ben's death, to finally battling the new villain Otto Octavius. And all these story strands, their way through 2 hours of pure entertainment. With the main story and these sub-stories, the film could have become confusing and meaningless, but thanks to the sublime artistry from Sam Raimi, it flows beautifully and never loses sight of itself. Which goes to say the acting is as brilliant from the main cast, which helps the first film have more exploration, and depth of the special effects this time around are flawless and much improved on the first one. Like, the CGI and effects are way better here than they were in the first one. It's like they really did better here now. It's like they probably saw the bad CGI of the first one and decided to improve it. Sam Raimi does an even more knockout job here as well, knowing like when to hold on to a character's face long enough, or swinging the camera along with Spider-Man to give the audience the exhilarating of flight. Raimi's more than competent enough to give this movie the look and feel of a movie comic book, and by utilizing his most signature camera shot, like zooming into and out of the character's eyes, the audience is invited to live for a moment in the tights of a superhero. And Spider-Man 2 has so many great messages to be heard in this film, the best of which seems to draw both Peter and Octavius together in the end, because this message is, in order for the right thing to be done, doesn't mean that we have to put away what we want the most. In both cases, there are even some strong arguments, and that's what made this movie such a surprise, is the depth that it possesses. And the movie is strung together in a great sequence that never bores the viewer. Like, the new villain gets a good intro, which explains the situation in a neat and tidy manner. Like, Dr. Otto Octavius is a perfect villain, which is played well by Alfred Molina, and visually represented to perfection. And the movements of Doc Ock are fantastic. And honestly, this movie might also have one of probably the scariest Marvel moments in any Marvel movie. It's when he does get his tentacles, and then that whole lab gets destroyed, and then he's brought to the hospital, and the surgeons try to remove his tentacles, but he's not the one controlling his tentacles, because the tentacles end up controlling themselves. So, on their own, the tentacles attack the surgeons one by one, and there's no music in the background here. And you even got the good little Evil Dead-like camera work here. That's a good Evil Dead throwback, since once again, this is a Sam Raimi movie. The tentacles themselves attack the surgeons, all while Doc Ock is unconscious the whole time, and he's got that blindfold on his eyes, so he doesn't know what's going on. It's not him doing it, guys. It's the tentacles doing it themselves, because the tentacles just work on their own. And, like, you even get a haunting shot of one lady being literally dragged into the darkness by one of the tentacles, and all while scratching up the floor. And you get another Evil Dead throwback. You literally, one of the surgeons finds a chainsaw, grabs a chainsaw, tries to saw off one of the tentacles, but much like the Evil Dead movie and camera work, that tentacle sees what's happening, and it attacks the doctor with a pretty haunting scream from the surgeon himself. It's a very good way to really set up the villain of Dr. Octopus. Just the movements of his tentacles are fantastic. Like, only Raimi presents it in a way that connects the loose visuals in our minds with the visual reality. And so many complain about there being too much story here, too much Peter Parker, and not enough action. One must realize is that if it were the other way around, you'd be complaining there wasn't enough storyline here. Like, even with the seeming flawless movies, some people still find something to complain about. But if I definitely didn't understand something is, the daughter of Peter's landlord. What's her role in even this whole trilogy? Nothing, really. And there's also the other factors that give Spider-Man 2 its worth of entertainment, even as a false story turned that we as the audience have seen plenty of other movies, comic book or otherwise, from Hollywood. Like, there's a nice dosage of humor to tip the scale in the romantic or non-romantic drama, especially with J.K. Simmons has added more screen time here, as the over-the-top newspaper editor J. Jonah Jameson is even more funnier in this one. And he gets funnier as this trilogy progresses. And as well to a few bits of business and dealing with the problems of being a guy in a costume. The performances are definitely not bad by the leads. I mean, another key performance in this movie is definitely Rosemary Harris's Aunt May, who's definitely one of the most effective of the dramatic parts of the story here. And here, she even kind of plays a bigger role, in pretty much kind of helping bring Spider-Man back here, because during the bang scene, she realizes that she was definitely wrong about Spider-Man earlier, and starts to see what a hero he is. Here, and kind of inspires Toby's Peter to try to be Spider-Man again during the scene when he meets her and they're moving out, and and she's deciding to let herself be evicted from her home and go into an apartment here. I really like they even develop Aunt May more in this movie, a little bit more. And finally, other thing that makes this movie so memorable is how much deeper and personal it is compared to the first one. I think the original, it shows Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, and this installment shows the problems that Peter actually faces actually being Spider-Man and what he must sacrifice here, like how it portrays in the comics. Heck, there's even still some funny moments here, specifically when Peter's trying to be Spider-Man again by jumping off a building. At first he thinks his powers are finally back, and he yells in back, but then suddenly, literally mid-air, his powers suddenly vanish again, and he literally falls down and literally, but thankfully he catches this little banner thing, and then just hits a wall. So since people would probably explain, how would he survive that? That's why. Because he has that little banner thing, he just hits a wall instead. Hence why he kind of survives it, and plus, he still has a bit of power left in him, so. Although, it does come with the iconic, "my back" line after he lands on the ground, which, thankfully, we all know in Spider-Man No Way Home he does get his back fixed, so. And I'm glad No Way Home threw back that line again. Here, and yeah, but. However, does this movie come with nitpicks? Yeah, unfortunately it does come with some nitpicks. First one the most. I hate to say this, guys, and I know some of you love Kirsten Dunst as MJ, but I have to agree with some people when they say they don't like Kirsten Dunst's version of MJ in these movies. And I don't blame Kirsten Dunst, guys, just to let you know. I just don't really like this trilogy's version of Mary Jane. She was fine in the first film, but she just kind of gets more kind of becomes a bit of an asshole in the sequels. I'm sorry, guys, she just becomes too unlikable as the trilogy progresses. In this movie, after Peter ends up missing her play because the car with the criminals, and the rude Bruce Campbell cameo, she just kind of acts all bitchy the rest of the film, right until she gets kidnapped. Until the coffee shop scene. Come on. Come on, Mary Jane. It's not Peter's fault some random heist happened that he had no control over. And it's also not his fault that some asshole Bruce Campbell Usher cameo wouldn't let him in, even though he still had a ticket, regardless if he was late or not. Like, it doesn't matter if Peter was late. Even if he was late or not, you still let him in if he still has a ticket. Okay, you don't just kick him out. Basically, like that usher just kicked out a customer. Regardless of that theater's stupid rules. And then she even kind of just snobbishly states she's getting married at like some point in the film. It was like, oh yeah. It's when Peter finally does see her play, and they do have a chat afterwards, like, sorry guys, but I gotta be honest there. The Mary Jane, to me, the better Mary Jane Watson is the one in the PS4 games. The one in the PS4 game from 2018 was actually more likable, and actually more of a help to Spider-Man. It wasn't just some damsel in distress. I feel like that's the better version. Kind of wish they tried to make the Mary Jane in these movies a little more like the PS4 one. And Anime does get some even better character development here, but I feel like she just gets less screen time here. I do like her role in this trilogy more, and I enjoyed her characterization here when she realized that she was wrong about Spider-Man before. But any other bad qualities? No. I can't think of anything else. I don't think of any other bad qualities with this movie. I think that's about it. So, because Spider-Man 2, despite those two little nitpicks, is one of the few Marvel films to hardly have any bad qualities. In the end, Spider-Man 2 is a highly recommend to Spider-Man and Marvel fans who loved the first Sam Raimi film and want to see that amazing journey continue perfectly, and a film that really gets the portrayal of Spider-Man done right. And it's a crowning achievement for Marvel in general. Anyways, that's it for my review of Spider-Man 2. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank Spider-Man 2, here's how I'm going to rank this movie.
So overall, if you love 2002 and want to see more of this Peter Parker, then I highly recommend you watch and buy this movie for your collection for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Spider-Man 2, I am obviously going to give Spider-Man 2 a big fucking 10 out of 10.
There we go. That wraps up my review for Spider-Man 2. So you're wondering, what's the next review going to be? Well, as we all know, I watched the whole trilogy this weekend, so our next review is going to be for the next film of the series that would sadly be one of the most controversial Marvel movies of all time, or mixedly controversial films of Marvel. It has its fans and it has its haters, and it was more split. But this film has gotten better for me over time, so yeah. Spider-Man 3 will be the next review. And then I'll wait till next week for the next Spider-Man reviews, because how this series is going to go, 3 Spider-Man movies one week, another 3 the next week, which would be the Amazing Spider-Man duology and Homecoming, or Iron Boy Jr. as I call that, Homecoming. And then the week after next week would be, I decided to include Venom. I haven't reviewed the first Venom movie yet. You guys saw my review for Let There Be Carnage, but you might as well review the first Venom movie, even if it's not a Spider-Man movie. Venom, Into Spider-Verse, and then Far From Home. And that completes the Spider-Man review series. So yeah, the series will be a little easier to do, and less hectic, because it's not as much movies as the last review series I did, but yeah, that's how it's going to go. Till then, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.